Hip-hop fans like myself view Madlib, Kanye West, RZA, Dilla as well geniuses, exploring the highest level of artistry. But to some people, especially those with an older way of thinking, an older mindset, view these artists as well talentless thieves who need to take from other artists to boost their own music. So is there any reasoning behind those claims? Well, I suppose you could look at this and call it stealing.
You miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only know you love her when you let her go.
But this? Now that is the highest level of artistry. Now hip hop has embraced sampling like no other genre. As I said earlier, we praise these producers and hold them at the highest level of talent. But what does the music industry think? For that, I'll pass you on to Jukebox History.
Thanks, Dobson. So, sampling has been around for a long time, and major artists have been using samplers for as long as they've been available. However, no other genre would utilize and innovate sampling like hip-hop has. In the modern music industry, it can be a long and expensive process to get samples cleared, but back in the early days of hip-hop, it was pretty much the Wild West. Albums like Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys, released in 1989, are renowned for packing in a crazy amount of samples that would be impossible in today's world. This wouldn't last for long though, as there were a couple court cases that would determine and shape how the music industry treated samples moving forward. The first case that many point to as being the catalyst for how sampling is treated in the music industry is De La Soul versus the Turtles in 1991. The Turtles sued De La Soul for using a snippet of their song on an interlude off of 3 Feet High and Rising, and although they settled out of court for $1.7 million, this set a massive precedent going forward. The second and perhaps most impactful case was Grand Upright Music versus Warner Brothers, or as many know it, the case against Biz Markie. He ended up using a sample by Gilbert O'Sullivan that they tried to clear initially but couldn't. The judge ruled that Markie was guilty of infringing on O'Sullivan's copyright and actually ended up referring him to criminal court for theft. They never charged him though, which is good. This case would be a defining moment in the hip-hop genre and would change the landscape of the music industry forever. And after 1991, everyone was on high alert for making sure their samples were cleared before releasing any music.
So yeah, artists nowadays need to be more selective with what they're sampling, and also need to disguise them better, pitch them up better, hide them better. Or if you're an artist backed by a big money label, let's say Def Jam, chances are sampling isn't as much of a worry to you. Sampling is just as present as it once was, but it still comes with all the controversy. But without it, we wouldn't have our favourite albums. The Low End Theory, Mad Villainy, The College Dropout, Donuts. A lot of our all-time favourites are built on the foundation of sampling. It's an art form, and it's a crucial way for musicians to express themselves artistically. Like I said, some call it unimaginative, uninspired. People like me say they're out of touch. Even if we fast forward in time, we wouldn't have albums like JPEG Mafia's Veteran without this. Hip hop specifically wouldn't have progressed and developed without the use of sampling. Just look at the two I mentioned earlier. Q-Tip's production on the Low End Theory revolutionised hip hop production as more and more artists turned to jazz music for their samples. And then you look at The College Dropout, the album that popularised this chipmunk soul sound that Kanye was a pioneer of. All you need to do is look up Kanye's long history of copyright infringement battles just to see how hard the music industry can push back against these artists. But that's just me speaking from a hip hop perspective. What about other genres?
So obviously hip-hop isn't the only genre that utilizes sampling. Everyone from rock artists to pop and R&B will use samples from time to time, but there are other genres that heavily incorporate samples into their music and in fact are built off of them. One great example is house music. After disco died in the late 70s, it would go back underground and DJs would create this new genre by sampling and remixing old disco tracks. Sampling like this would be a staple of house music, and the genre really wouldn't be the same without it. A more modern genre that heavily uses sampling is called plunderphonics. Plunderphonics takes sampling a step further, and the artists in this genre create entire projects off of sampling other recognizable pieces of music. The genre itself is considered experimental and can get pretty wild, but there are some more accessible projects in the genre as well. One of the more well-known plunderphonics albums is Introducing by DJ Shadow, which is considered a classic in the hip-hop world. In the mainstream, people consider hip-hop to be the torchbearer for sampling, but they are far from the only genre that uses this art form.
So is sampling stealing? No, it isn't. Can it border on derivative at times? Yes, just look at these new pop tracks circulating, where they take a popular sample and do absolutely nothing with it. But if an artist is creative with a sample, then you best believe you might hear some of the best music ever created. And I do believe that the owning artist should be compensated for the usage of samples. That's only fair, but at the same time, I do believe the system shouldn't be as grueling and complex as what it is, because at the moment in time, it seems the restriction on samples is suppressing creative expression in the music industry. I just want to say a massive thank you to Jukebox History for their help with this video. We recently done a video on his channel breaking down the legendary Grey album, so go ahead and give that a watch, and go subscribe to him for more amazing music content. Thank you.